Everybody, Jay Privman, the national correspondent with Daily Racing Form, joined by Mike Watchmaker. He's the national handicapper with Daily Racing Form. And Mike, we're going to take a look at the two races this weekend that are significant races on the road to the Kentucky Derby. Several horses on our Derby watch lists that are going to be running, most of them trying to have their final prep for the Kentucky Derby. Let's start with the Florida Derby, in which Gunnevera, currently the second choice on your future line, heads up that field. State of Honor, the other horse in our Derby Watch top 20 in that race. What are your thoughts in this one? Because you liked Gunnevera last time when he won the Fountain of Youth.
I did. I thought the Fountain of Youth really set up nicely for him, Jay. And I think the Florida Derby sets up well for him, too. I mean, usually drawing the extreme outside in two-turn races at Gulfstream is a death sentence. And Gunnevera drew the extreme outside. Now, 11 were entered, but as you've explained in print very clearly, battalion runner is only in there as a security blanket in case something happens, always streaming. Otherwise, battalion runner is not going to race. And so Gunnevera will break from post 10, but still post 10 is a terrible post going two turns at Gulfstream Park for most. But he's a drop out of it immediately type closer. And he's going to get over before, even with the short run to the first turn, before they hit that first turn. And there's a lot of suspect early speed in this race. A lot of speed in this race that looks very questionable going two turns. So I think the setup, while not exactly the same as it was in the Fountain Youth, is still similarly favorable for Gunnevera, and I think he's a likely winner.
The one thing I like about Gunnevera is that they've certainly found his running style. They just grab him. And in the Holy Bull, they kind of wanted to keep him maybe a little closer than he normally would be. He wasn't close, but closer than he had been in some of his previous races. And he didn't really finish off his race that time. He's just much better when they grab him and make one run. And I'm sure we'll see the same strategy. And as you pointed, when they use that strategy, the post is not going to matter from where he's drawn. Now, one of the horses he's going to have to run down is State of Honor. This is a horse who's coming out of the Tampa Bay Derby. And Mike, I think this horse has some talent, but in order for it to be at his best going as far as he's going to run on Saturday, he needs to slow down a little bit earlier. And I haven't seen yet in his last couple of races that he's capable of doing that. He's a very headstrong horse, and I think he's going to contribute to a pretty hot pace in here, but I don't really think that his prospects for hanging around and being perhaps a winner of this race are quite good. What do you think of State of Honor?
I think State of Honor's got two major hurdles to overcome here. Number one is the distance of the race. This horse has had 5 starts around 2 turns in his career, and in all 5 of those races, he's given ground in the late stages. He's lost ground in the final furlong of those races, and that's a sign of a horse that just really doesn't want to go that far. Now, it would be maybe a different picture if he was absolutely loose in the lead and he was going to be able to go out there and go 49. But that's not going to happen because 3 Rules is in this race, and 3 Rules was the pace setter in the Fountain of Youth. And I thought he, given the fractions of the other route races on Fountain of Youth Day, I thought 3 Rules set a very strong, fast pace in the Fountain of Youth. And, I think he's a sprinter, but he's now breaking immediately to the inside of Gunnevera. He's breaking from, with 10 starting, post 9, he's got to go. And that's going to make State of Honor's life miserable because I don't think State of Honor is going to be able to win this race from second. I actually think that a lot of these questionable horses in terms of like these distant challenged horses that are going to be involved early are going to drop out of it. And we're going to get somebody odd to run second in here. And as you've noted, when speaking about the fairgrounds, the Louisiana Derby, which we will discuss too, but it applies to this race as well. A horse who finished second in this race is going to get into the Kentucky Derby.
Well, let's take a look at that Louisiana Derby. Both the Florida Derby and the Louisiana Derby are on Saturday. Both are $1 million races, both with 100 points to the winner, 40 points for second. So as Mike was pointing out, you run 1-2 in this race, you've pretty much guaranteed yourself a spot in the Kentucky Derby. But Mike, the Louisiana Derby came up kind of an odd race in terms of our Derby Watch top 20 because the only horse in the field currently on our list is Gervin, who I think is a kind of a sneaky horse in that he's only run 3 times. He didn't have ideal preparation coming into his last start, and yet he still won. And I'm expecting him to run even better on Saturday. What are your thoughts on Gervin in the Louisiana Derby field?
Well, I think it would be a major disappointment if Gervin didn't win this race and win it convincingly. I mean, by several lengths, because I think this is probably an easier field than the one he beat in the Risen Star. It's a light field. There are not many horses. There's some very questionable horses in this race, and as someone who wanted to see Gervin prove himself more than he did in the Risen Star, I'm disappointed because he's really not going to have the opportunity to do it in this race unless he falls down at the start like Arrogant did last week. The thing of it is that Gervin had a perfect trip in the Risen Star, and that in itself isn't a bad thing, but he had a perfect trip against a fairly weak field and didn't run fast. And it's the combination of those things that really made me feel as though I want to see more out of this horse before I actually buy into him. And I don't know that the Louisiana Derby, because it's kind of a light field after Gervin, as evidenced by the fact he's the only one on Derby Watch this week that's in this race. I don't think there's anybody that's, could really, expose what he could do. I don't know that we're going to learn much more about Gervin unless something untoward happens during the running of the race.
Well, whatever we learn from the Louisiana Derby and the Florida Derby, we will recap for you next week right here at drf.com. That is our preview of both the Florida Derby and the Louisiana Derby. For a recap of the three big races from last weekend, you can find a video here as well. For Mike Watchmaker in New York, I'm Jay Privman here at the Fairgrounds. Thanks for watching.